In 1765, Scottish explorer James Bruce came upon the ruins of a city in the desert in Algeria in North Africa that had been buried for 1,000 years. He and his fellow travellers then proceeded to clear away the sand with their bare hands, where they uncovered several sculptures of Emperor Antoninus Pius, Hadrian's successor, and after further digging found what he described as a small town full of elegant buildings. He was the first European to visit the site in centuries. James Bruce had discovered an ancient Roman city called Thamagadi that was originally founded by the Emperor Trajan in 100 AD. The city is one of the best preserved Roman ruins in Algeria and had been well preserved due to the fact that it had been covered over by the Sahara Desert. It is such a remarkable site that some experts have dubbed it the Algerian Pompeii, and was built virtually out of nothing. Thamagadi is a lost Roman city on the edge of the Sahara Desert that remained hidden beneath the sand for nearly 1,000 years, and this ancient city is one of the best surviving examples of Roman town planning anywhere in the historical empire. Unfortunately, in 765, they would have been unable to show the world their amazing discovery due to the fact that photography had not yet been invented, and were unable to take any sculptures back to Europe, so they reburied them. When Bruce returned to Great Britain, his claims that he had found an ancient Roman city in the North African desert was met with scepticism, and he was so disappointed that he retired to Scotland. In 1780, he began writing a memoir of his time in Africa titled Travels to Discover the Source of the Nile. The book was published in 1790. When Bruce died 4 years later, much of Britain still had not acknowledged his achievements. In 1867, Sir Robert Playfair was the British Consul General in Algeria and was intrigued by James Bruce's travel journal, which detailed his findings in Thamagadi. Playfair decided to go in search of the site. In 1877, Playfair also wrote a book called Travels in the Footsteps of Bruce in Algeria and Tunis, and describes in detail what he found in the desolate and austere surroundings of the treeless desert plain, stating, "These hills are covered with countless numbers of the most interesting megalithic remains." A few years later, French colonists took control of the site in 1881 and began a large-scale excavation, which continued until Algeria gained independence from France in 1959. Aerial views of the Roman city shows a grid design, which tells us that the grid design that we have in modern cities is not as original as we thought. Thamagadi was designed with an orthogonal grid, which is a type of urban design layout that consists of mostly square street blocks with straight streets intersecting at right angles. The city's location was extremely important in that it protected the Roman Empire's southern borders. North Africa was a centre of grain production, and Rome's Third Augustan Legion was stationed in Thamagadi to protect the grain and its transport to Rome. Several hundred men would be discharged from the legion every 2 years, and they settled in Thamagadi as a kind of pension for their service and was home to veterans of the Third Augustan Legion. Their presence also served as a deterrent to foreign invaders. Over a few generations, the outpost had expanded to over 10,000 residents of both Roman, African, as well as Berbers from North Africa. Most of the residents of Thamagadi would never have lived or ever seen Rome, but the city invested heavily in high culture and Roman identity, despite the city being thousands of kilometres from its mother country of Rome. Many non-Romans were granted citizenship, and in return for their loyalty, the local aristocracy became a part of the Roman Empire and benefited from its protection and legal system. They were also able to use its modern amenities, such as the Roman bath, housing, theatres and public library. Thamagadi also has a very rare example of surviving public library from the Roman world. Built in the 2nd century, the library would have housed manuscripts relating to religion, military history and governance. These would have been rolled up and stored in wooden scroll cases, placed in shelves separated by ornate columns. The shelves can still be seen standing in the midst of the town ruins. Thamagadi was a walled settlement and was accessed from one of its 4 gates, one direction for each point of the compass. On the western side of the old city, the gate was replaced by a triumphal arch or Trojan's Arch when the urban area spread beyond its original limits. Trojan's Arch stands at the end of the east-west pointing road, connecting the old and new areas, and is often regarded as one of the city's most impressive structural remains. The road leading from the arch to the new area of Thamagadi is decorated with columns, and its central section was designed specifically for the use of chariots, while pedestrians walked on either side of it. Thamagadi's various structures characterised a typical Roman settlement, where at the centre of Thamagadi is the Forum, which was a public square whose primary purpose was as a place for the selling of goods. The Forum was also used as a place for various social gatherings. To the south of Thamagadi's Forum was the city's theatre, which was the place where public performances were held. The theatre was built during the 160s AD and was formed by cutting into a side of a hill. Although Thamagadi's theatre is much smaller than most others in the Roman Empire, about 3,500 people could still be seated in it at any given time. In the mid-3rd century AD, the city's population peaked at 15,000 people. All in all, the city measured 500,000 square metres. Thamagadi flourished for hundreds of years, becoming prosperous and thus an attractive target for raiders. Unfortunately, the general crisis mounting on the borders of the Roman Empire eventually took its toll on Thamagadi. After being looted by the Vandals, who it is believed originated from Scandinavia during the 5th century, the city began to sink into ruin. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire, Thamagadi enjoyed a brief resurgence as a Christian centre, and a fort was built outside the city in 539 AD. Unfortunately, the city was abandoned either before or during the Arab invasions of the 700 AD. The desert sands then swept in and buried Thamagadi. The remains of as many as 14 baths have survived, and a mosaic portraying Roman sandals were found at the entrance of a house in Thamagadi dating back to the 1st or 2nd century, with the inscription Bene Lava, which translates to wash well. This mosaic, along with a collection of more than 200 others found in Thamagadi, are held inside a museum at the entrance of the site. The 12-metre high triumphal arch made of sandstone has survived, along with the 3,500-seat theatre. There was also a basilica, where a large hexagonal 3-step immersion baptismal font decorated with mosaics was uncovered in the 1930s. Having been buried for centuries under sand with nothing built on top of it, Thamagadi is one of the few Roman cities excavated in its entirety.